The 5 a.m. Club, Educational Commentary and Critical Analysis. Part 2. Scientific Claims, Separating Evidence from Enthusiasm. Robin Sharma's work references various scientific concepts: neuroplasticity, cortisol rhythms, dopamine spikes, and cellular biology. As part of our critical analysis, it's important to examine how the book uses scientific language and whether its claims align with current research. The neuroscience of morning routines. The book argues that early morning exercise triggers beneficial neurochemical releases, including brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports cognitive function and learning. This claim has legitimate scientific support. Research does show that exercise promotes BDNF production, which facilitates neural growth and connectivity. Morning exercise can indeed enhance cognitive performance for several hours afterward. However, the book sometimes presents these benefits as unique to early morning timing, when the research is more nuanced. Exercise benefits brain function regardless of when it occurs. The advantage of morning exercise is often more practical than biological. It gets accomplished before competing demands arise. The discussion of cortisol rhythms is similarly mixed. The book correctly notes that cortisol naturally peaks in the early morning, preparing the body for wakefulness and activity. However, it somewhat oversimplifies the relationship between cortisol timing and optimal performance. Cortisol isn't simply good or bad. Its effects depend on duration, intensity, and context. Habit formation and neural pathways. Sharma's explanation of how repeated behaviors create neural pathways is fundamentally sound. Neuroscience research supports the concept that consistent practice strengthens specific neural circuits through a process called myelination. The more you repeat a behavior, the more efficient the neural pathway becomes, eventually requiring less conscious effort. The book's application of this science is generally appropriate. The emphasis on consistency over intensity aligns with what we know about neuroplasticity. Sporadic, intense effort is less effective for habit formation than regular, moderate practice. Where the presentation becomes problematic is in suggesting a precise timeline or universal process. Brain plasticity varies significantly based on age, prior experience, the complexity of the habit, and individual neurobiology. The 66-day average discussed earlier is useful as a general guideline, but shouldn't be interpreted as a guarantee. Sleep science and early rising. Perhaps the most significant scientific tension in the book involves sleep. Sharma advocates waking at 5 a.m. while also emphasizing the importance of adequate rest. These goals can conflict, especially for people whose current schedule doesn't support an early bedtime. Sleep research is unambiguous. Most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep for optimal functioning. Chronic sleep deprivation impairs cognitive function, emotional regulation, immune response, and metabolic health. No morning routine, however well designed, can compensate for insufficient sleep. The book acknowledges the need for adequate rest, but doesn't fully address the practical challenge this creates. For someone currently waking at 7 a.m. and going to bed at midnight, shifting to a 5 a.m. wake time requires moving bedtime to 9 or 10 p.m. This represents a significant lifestyle change that affects evening commitments, family time, and social interactions. Our analysis suggests that successful adoption of an early morning routine requires equal attention to evening routines. The question isn't just, can I wake at 5 a.m., but can I create the life conditions that allow me to sleep by 9 p.m.? For many people, the evening restructuring proves more challenging than the morning wake-up. Cultural and socioeconomic context. A critical analysis must address the cultural assumptions embedded in the 5 a.m. Club and consider who has the privilege to implement its recommendations. The productivity culture narrative. Sharma's work exists within a broader cultural context that valorizes optimization, efficiency, and continuous self-improvement. This productivity culture has both benefits and costs. On the positive side, it empowers individuals to take agency over their lives. The message that you can improve your circumstances through consistent action and better habits offers hope and direction. For people feeling stuck or powerless, this framework can be genuinely transformative. However, productivity culture can also become oppressive. The implicit message that you should always be optimizing, always be growing, always be becoming better can create exhausting pressure. It pathologizes rest, positions contentment as complacency, and suggests that if you're not constantly improving, you're falling behind. The book occasionally reinforces these problematic aspects of productivity culture. The emphasis on waking before everyone else, on using every moment productively, on constantly developing skills can feed into what some critics call toxic optimization, the belief that every aspect of life should be instrumentalized toward achievement. A healthier interpretation of Sharma's work would emphasize intentionality over intensity. The goal isn't to extract maximum productivity from every moment, but rather to create space for what matters most. Sometimes, what matters most is rest, play, or simply being present without agenda. Access and privilege. The book's recommendations assume certain privileges that deserve acknowledgement. Implementing the 5 a.m. club routine is significantly easier for people with control over their schedules. Someone working multiple jobs or shift work may have limited flexibility to restructure their sleep schedule. Those without caregiving responsibilities that dictate timing. Parents of infants, caregivers for elderly family members, or single parents may not have the luxury of uninterrupted morning time. Individuals with safe, quiet spaces for morning routines. Not everyone has access to an environment conducive to meditation, exercise, or focused study. People whose partners or household members can accommodate the early schedule. If your 5 a.m. wake-up disturbs others in a small living space, conflict can undermine the benefits. Those with sufficient resources to prepare the groundwork. The book's recommendations often assume access to books, learning resources, exercise equipment, or quiet spaces that represent economic privilege. This doesn't invalidate the core principles, but it does mean that universal application isn't possible without adaptation. Someone working 2 jobs to support their family may need to find 10 minutes for development rather than 60, and that's perfectly valid. The danger is when privileged implementation becomes the standard against which everyone measures themselves. Practical application. Who benefits most? Having examined the framework critically, let's consider who is most likely to benefit from this approach and how to adapt it for different circumstances. Ideal candidates for this framework. The 5 a.m. club methodology works best for people who have reached a plateau and need a structured intervention. If you're coasting in multiple areas of life, this framework provides clear direction and accountability. Respond well to external structure. Some people thrive with specific protocols and routines, while others find them constraining. If you're in the former category, this system offers valuable scaffolding. Face time scarcity during traditional hours. If your days are consumed by demands, work, family, commitments, early morning may genuinely be the only available time for personal development. Need integration across multiple life dimensions. If you've been neglecting physical health while pursuing career goals, or vice versa, the 4 Interior Empires framework encourages balance. Value delayed gratification and long-term thinking. The benefits of this routine compound over months and years rather than days or weeks. It requires patience and faith in the process. Populations who may need adaptation. Parents of young children. Instead of a single 60-minute block, consider 3 20-minute sessions distributed throughout the day whenever opportunity arises. The fragmented approach honors your reality while maintaining the development commitment. Night shift workers. Apply the principles to your own circadian rhythm. Create a victory hour after waking, whenever that occurs. The consistency matters more than the clock time. People managing chronic illness or disability, adapt the physical movement portion to what your body can sustainably handle. Some days this might be gentle stretching rather than intense exercise. The practice of showing up matters more than the intensity. Individuals in crisis or acute stress. Consider temporarily simplifying the routine to focus on just one dimension, perhaps 20 minutes of meditation daily without the pressure of a full 3-part routine. Build from there as capacity increases. Those experiencing depression or severe mental health challenges, the book's emphasis on discipline and willpower can feel impossible when you're struggling to get out of bed at all. In these circumstances, professional mental health support should precede or accompany any routine implementation. Be extraordinarily gentle with yourself. Alternative perspectives. What the book doesn't address. Every framework has blind spots, areas where its particular lens doesn't penetrate. Understanding what the 5 a.m. Club doesn't address helps readers supplement it with additional resources or perspectives. The role of rest and recovery. While the book acknowledges the importance of sleep, it doesn't deeply engage with the concept of rest as productive in itself. The emphasis on early rising and structured development can obscure the reality that sometimes the highest value activity is doing less. Research on high performance consistently shows that recovery is when growth actually occurs. Athletes understand this. Muscles don't strengthen during workouts, but during the rest periods afterward. The same principle applies to cognitive and creative work. A complete approach to personal development would balance the book's emphasis on disciplined effort with equal attention to strategic rest, play, and leisure. These aren't rewards for hard work. They're essential components of sustainable excellence. The social dimension. The 4 Interior Empires framework is primarily individualistic. It focuses on personal development across various dimensions, but gives limited attention to relationships, community, and collective well-being. Human beings are fundamentally social creatures. Our well-being depends not just on our individual health and development, but on the quality of our relationships and our sense of belonging. Some research suggests that social connection is the single strongest predictor of happiness and longevity. A more complete framework would explicitly include a social empire, attention to the health and depth of your relationships, your contribution to community, and your ability to collaborate effectively with others. Morning solitude is valuable, but so is making time for meaningful connection. Addressing systemic barriers. The book operates primarily at the individual level, what you can control through personal choice and discipline. This emphasis is both the strength and limitation of most self-help literature. Individual agency matters, but so do systemic factors. Some people face barriers to success that no amount of early rising will overcome. Discrimination, lack of access to quality education, economic systems that keep people in survival mode, healthcare inequities that create chronic stress. This isn't an argument against personal development. People can and should work with what they control. But it's important to recognize that individual transformation, while valuable, doesn't address collective challenges. Sometimes the appropriate response isn't waking earlier to work harder, but organizing collectively to change unjust systems. Final assessment: extracting enduring value. After this comprehensive examination, what enduring value can we extract from the 5 a.m. Club? Core principles worth keeping. First, the principle of priority management. Dedicating time to personal development before external demands arrive is genuinely valuable. Whether that's 5 a.m., 9 p.m., or any other protected time, the practice of putting your growth first rather than last is transformative. Second, the integration of multiple dimensions. The recognition that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health are interconnected rather than separate silos represents sophisticated thinking about human flourishing. Excellence in one area often depends on maintaining adequate function in the others. Third, the emphasis on consistency. Sharma rightly argues that regular, modest effort beats sporadic intensity. This aligns with research on habit formation, skill development, and behavioral change. Small daily investments compound dramatically over time. Fourth, the connection between personal development and contribution. The book's emphasis on developing yourself not for selfish consumption, but to increase your capacity to serve others, adds moral dimension to what could otherwise be mere self-optimization. What to release or reframe? Release the rigidity of specific timing. Extract the principle of protected development time while remaining flexible about when it occurs based on your biology and life circumstances. Reframe the 66 days as a general guide rather than a universal law. Habit formation timelines vary dramatically. Some habits install quickly, others require extended practice. What matters is persistent effort, not hitting a specific day count. Release any shame about needing adaptation. The book presents an idealized version of implementation. Your version will be messier, more interrupted, and more context-dependent. That's not failure, it's reality. Adaptation is wisdom, not weakness. Reframe self-improvement as one component of a good life rather than its primary purpose. The goal isn't endless optimization, but sufficient capacity to engage meaningfully with what matters to you. Relationships, creativity, contribution, experience, beauty, love. Integrating this framework into a larger philosophy. The 5 a.m. Club works best when integrated into a broader philosophy of life rather than treated as a complete system. Consider it one tool among many. Pair it with attention to rest and recovery. Balance structured development time with unstructured downtime. Supplement individual development with relationship investment. Make sure your morning routine serves rather than replaces meaningful connection with others. Connect personal discipline to larger purpose. Ask regularly, what am I developing this capacity for? How does this serve what I most care about? Remain attentive to systemic factors. Personal development is valuable but insufficient for addressing collective challenges. Maintain awareness of how individual and societal change interact. Hold the routine loosely enough to adapt across life seasons. What serves you during a period of intense career building may not serve during a health crisis or family emergency. Wisdom means knowing when to hold firm and when to adjust. Conclusion. The 5 a.m. Club offers a structured approach to personal development that has clearly resonated with many readers. Its emphasis on early morning routines, the 20-20-20 formula, and the 4 interior empires provides concrete direction in a world that often feels overwhelmingly complex. Our critical analysis reveals both strengths and limitations. The framework's greatest value lies not in its specific prescriptions, but in its underlying principles. Prioritize personal development. Integrate multiple life dimensions. Embrace consistency, and connect self-improvement to contribution. The path forward for readers is one of intelligent adaptation. Take what serves your circumstances, release what doesn't, and remain willing to modify your approach as your life evolves. The goal isn't perfect implementation of someone else's system, but rather the cultivation of practices that support your flourishing and enable your contribution. Early mornings may become your sacred time, or perhaps you'll find that power hour at a different point in your day. You might follow the 20-20-20 formula precisely, or you might create your own rhythm. The specific practices matter less than the commitment to ongoing growth and the wisdom to adapt your approach to your reality. In the end, the most valuable question isn't, should I join the 5 a.m. Club? but rather, what practices will help me become more of who I hope to be, so I can offer more of what the world needs? However you answer that question, whether at 5 a.m. or any other time, is where your real work begins. This educational commentary is designed for critical analysis and discussion of the book's themes and concepts. For the complete experience and full framework, readers should engage with the original work.